Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and this is going to be a big month for prospect content. Got the first-year player draft blueprint coming next week, the first-year player draft rankings. There's already over 150 players in there, but I'll be putting the finishing touches on those. And then obviously the big top 400 prospect rankings update will be January 15th. So almost a week from today, but before we get into full-on prospect content season over the next few weeks here, I wanted to talk with my buddy Dustin McComas about starting pitchers. We're going to do kind of a full-on starting pitching preview, or at least kind of something that amounts to that over the span of an hour or so. And my idea for this is that Dustin and I are going to look at the starting pitchers in groups of 15 in order of recent draft champions ADP. So we'll be referring to the first group of 15 as the SP1s, the second group of 15 as the SP2s, etc. And for each group of 15, Dustin and I are going to give a target and a void. So looking forward to this. But Dustin first, how are you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm doing well, James. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to jump on here, and especially talking about pitching. I feel like this is the group I've spent the most time with by far, prepping for the ongoing draft season. But happy to be here. Hope you had a great holiday, and looking forward to that first year player draft coverage. I don't do many dynasty leagues at all, but being the draft scouting junkie that I am, always looking through your content and kind of seeing where the prospects stack up and following their journey. So you guys crush it over there, and happy to talk some pitchers today.
Yeah, absolutely. And YouTube 15, if you want to get 15% off RotoWire sub, to check out that first year player draft content. But we'll get things started here with these SP1s, Dustin. Obviously, I think anyone who's listening to this show right now in January probably has a good idea of who the guys in the top 15 or so are among starting pitchers. But just briefly, I'll say Tariq Skubal, Paul Skeens, Garrett Crochet, Christopher Sanchez, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Chris Sale, Bryan Woo, Logan Gilbert, Hunter Brown, Jacob deGrom, Hunter Green, Cole Reagans, Logan Webb, Max Fried, Blake Snell are the 15 here. Very tight cutoff there. A bunch of guys that had similar ADPs to Snell, but we're going to say that these are the SP1s. Dustin, I'll throw it to you first. Who is your target of these SP1s?
Yeah, I like a lot of these guys, and it's kind of, for me, where you are in a draft and you kind of just take one that falls to you. But I will say I have been way more open to taking a first-round pitcher this year than in any year past. And part of the reason why is I feel like it's kind of hard to predict how your room is going to treat those guys beyond Skubal, Skeens, Crochet. You could see some of those guys go in the second round, very, very early third round. And if you're trying to grab a reliever early on, you can kind of get shut out from that entire group. So if I'm picking the middle back first round, I've been more open to this. And for me, it's Garrett Crochet, just because he typically goes third among that Skubal, Skeens, Crochet group. And look at what he did last year for Boston. But for me, it's like the way Alex Cora talks about Garrett Crochet from like a workload standpoint, they're going to let this guy go. He eclipsed 200 innings last year. I think that's definitely a play again this year. I think Boston's going to have a good team. If they do end up adding Alex Bregman again, I think they're going to have a really good defense behind their starting pitchers. The strikeouts are going to be there. I feel good about the ratios. So for me, it's Crochet. I just look at the value he returned last year. I could see a similar repeat type performance again this year. And Boston is just, there's no limit with this guy in terms of innings. I think they're just going to let him go until he can't go anymore.
Yeah, no arguments there. I support those top three getting drafted where they're getting drafted right now. Mm-hmm. I think I took Skeens over Crochet in my one situation where I was deciding between those two, but it's kind of a toss-up for me. I mean, these guys are SP1s for a reason, so it's you can't go wrong for the most part. I'm with you. Like I have no problem going early starting pitching this year, and if I don't get one of these guys, at least something probably went wrong. But to me, Hunter Brown right now, roughly 9th of these 15, but that's kind of been fluctuating throughout draft season. I just think Hunter Brown is of the guys that are sort of available, maybe early third, definitely late second, but maybe early third. I think Hunter Brown is my favorite combination of what I perceive to be just a very safe package where like any of these pitchers can get hurt, but I just think Hunter Brown has been kind of built up the right way. He's entering his absolute prime from a workload standpoint. He's entering his age 27 season after, going 155, 170, 185 over the last 3 years from an inning standpoint. I think he can push up to, 190, maybe even 195, 200 this year. But definitely getting over 200 strikeouts and just a guy that I don't think I'll have to worry about at all from like an injury or just bad matchup standpoint. He's just a set it and forget it guy. So love most of these guys, but Hunter Brown was my target there. Okay, let's do the avoids here, and I'm kind of scared about this one, Dustin, because I know like I'm going against projections a little bit here, but I'm just not going to be able to pull the trigger on Bryan Woo. He's going 7th out of these guys. I could see him going 5th, 6th, maybe even 4th in some drafts, just because of how much love there is for Bryan Woo out there. I don't quite trust him yet as like a true ace from a workload standpoint. I know he got up to 186 last year. But when he got up to 121 in 2024, that was his first time over 90 innings ever. So I think, and I was dead wrong about Garrett Crochet's ability to handle this massive jump year after year, year over year last year. So I could definitely be wrong about Woo. I'm just not comfortable enough to pull the trigger on him expecting 180 innings. That's just kind of nitpicking among these guys, obviously, but he's my avoid. I know he's a very popular target for many.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, it feels like, every 3 months there was something with a forearm or an elbow or something was going on with Bryan Woo, and you just kind of kept assuming that he was going to hit the IL for a lengthy stint at some point, and he just didn't. So, he's tantalizing though. I mean, you look at that whip and the whip projection and the strikeout to walk and stuff like that. But I totally understand where you're coming from, especially when you're looking at where he's going. I mean, he's been going as early as like 32nd in some recent drafts. So he's getting pushed way, way up there. The avoids for me, Blake Snell is an obvious one to me. I know he's the bottom guy on this list, average ADP 61, but he just hasn't often returned the workload. And I feel like it's just an unnecessary risk when you look at a lot of these other pitchers that you can target in that area. And plus, he's a very frustrating player to roster. It's just like, I feel like if you're in a fab league, you kind of have to ask yourself once a year, do you have to cut Blake Snell or not? Because he's out for an extended period of time. The other guy too is a guy I really, really liked last year, is Logan Webb. Nothing to do with like the skills or anything. I just think that like he throws so many innings and the whip could end up being a little bit of a detriment because he does throw so many innings. I feel like sometimes we kind of look like, hey, he made the strikeout gains and he's going to be a guy who can get some wins and he plays in a good park. You kind of look at that whip though, and I feel like that's the stat with these guys. Like, I want to make sure I get a whip anchor early on because I feel like I can find some strikeouts, some guys that might beat their ERA projections later on, but I got to get some good whip early on if I'm going to use a high pick on a starting pitcher. And for him, I think he's a guy that like can almost do a little bit more harm than good when you're targeting him in this range because of that whip.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And Webb would just not be an ideal SP1. I agree with the whip part, and then also just like the strikeout part. Like he's just known as this guy who just eats innings. But of all these guys, if like one of them were to just only pitch half the season, Webb would be the one that would leave you most compromised from a strikeout standpoint because you just probably haven't banked enough at that point. So you just need him to be healthy all season. You need the full volume for the counting stats from him. But like you said, probably best to just take Webb after one of his unlucky years like you did past year where the price is a little cheaper. So definitely get that one. And Snell, like you said, I mean, it's kind of a cutoff here where there's a bunch of these guys that are in the SP2s that have similar ADPs, but definitely belongs, I think, last in that SP1 group. Okay, so for these SP2s, not going to read all the names each time, but Joe Ryan is the highest of these guys. Kevin Gausman down at 30 with a recent ADP of around 115 overall. So Joe Ryan through Kevin Gausman here are the SP2s. Dustin went first with the target last time. I'll go ahead and just throw out that, Kyle Bradish, I love here. I also love Jesus Luzardo. I think it's interesting. I was talking with my partner Todd Whitestone over the phone the other day about Luzardo, and we had him everywhere, and he was just very frustrating, especially kind of in the middle of the summer where is he tipping pitches? Like what's going on? He just keeps getting lit up. But even after all that, Luzardo still finished with just a really strong season. And I think the strikeouts you get from him among this SP2 range is really enviable. And then I've recently started really kind of warming up to the price on Eury Perez. I just think, if you're looking for a guy who could reasonably return like top 10 pitcher season who's going in this range, it's pretty easy for me to see that happening with Eury, especially how he finished and just the upside we've seen him flash in the past. But a lot of fun targets in this range. Who do you want to go with?
Yeah, I like all those guys, but I really especially like Bradish and Luzardo. I had Bradish on my list. I think the cat's kind of out of the bag. Like if you read enough content and listen to enough podcasts, it seems like everybody's kind of coming around to Kyle Bradish. And he had a crazy stat. I think it was when he came back. It was like right before he got hurt, and then when he came back, if you kind of finagled the stats to be that sort of workload, like his strikeout rate was like the best in baseball. And you don't really think of Kyle Bradish as that kind of a pitcher, but like when you watch him and you dig in on him, it's like he's got the stuff to really miss a ton of bats. And I just really love betting on those guys that come back from the major surgery, that get on the mound, they have an actual workload, they show the skills are there, the stuff's there, the velocity's there, the health is there, and then you can feel totally confident. All right, these guys are going to have a normal offseason, and they're going to go into the upcoming season probably with little to no restrictions. So really like him. I like what Baltimore has been doing this offseason in terms of just improving their team. There's a lot of guys to like on this list. I put Gausman on there because he's at the bottom and because I kind of think people almost take him for granted a little bit. I know the strikeout rate has certainly dipped a little bit, but you look at this guy, since, the 2021 season, 2.81 ERA, 3.35 ERA, 3.16, 3.83, 3.59. He throws a ton of innings. He's a guy that's going to give you probably a decent whip. Some years it's been better than others. 106 last year. In years past, kind of been more the 1-2 range. But Toronto just has such a fantastic defense, like with Ernie Clement and Varsho and Andres Jimenez and Kirk behind the plate. I just really like betting on him as a guy that's going to throw a lot of innings, probably get you some wins, more of a compiler, but a compiler that I think that's also going to give you some ratios and give you a solid whip. So he's a guy I find myself kind of wanting to land on in some DCs, especially if I use a riskier pick early on in drafts. Maybe I go after a Hunter Green or a Cole Reagans or somebody like that earlier in draft. He's a good guy to pair with one of those kind of those higher upside arms that are kind of in that SP1 group we just talked about.
Yeah, and he's not that dissimilar from the guy you said you were sort of fading from the first round or the SP1s, like Logan Webb and Kevin Gausman. Mm-hmm. One of them shouldn't be going 60 picks higher than the other, probably. I think that makes a lot of sense. Bradish, what do you think? Do you think he kind of just stays in this sort of, what is this, kind of fifth round where he's kind of parked right now? Or do you think he's kind of going more fourth round by March?
I think by March he's fourth. I could see him. He's gone as early as I think 57 recently. So I think by the time we get to Vegas, he's firmly in play as like a late fourth round kind of a guy. I'd be willing to follow that price. I really, really like what he's shown. But I think the arrow and with Luzardo too, I think those two guys in particular, when people dive in to see what Philly did with Luzardo, I think both those guys could be in play as like late 4th round guys in March.
Now, my avoid from this group is just pretty boring. Tyler Glasnow. Just I could honestly see myself rostering pretty much every other pitcher in this group of 15 here, other than Tyler Glasnow. So just kind of an easy fading the workload pick on Glasnow. I've never really regretted that one. So who's your avoid?
Yeah, I had Glasnow on my list as well. Similar reasons. 2 other guys I had. One was Spencer Strider, and I just can't get over how the stuff looked visually when he came back. It just lacked the same bite, the same kind of explosiveness, the same way it kind of came out of the hand, the same way batters reacted to it. It just wasn't the same fastball. It just wasn't the same guy. And I'm a little worried, sometimes when those guys come back from elbow surgeries, usually it's the command that's a little bit lacking behind, but the stuff's kind of there, especially the velocity. And with Strider, that just wasn't the case. And I know he had some moments in the season where it's like, okay, there's kind of a little bit more of a vintage Strider, but until I see him on the mound again in spring and see what it looks like, that's going to be an avoid for me. And I say that knowing if he comes out in his first spring outing and pops 99 in the second inning, his price is probably going to go up about 40 picks instantly. And then your time is gone to draft him at an affordable price. With Nick Pivetta, I feel like we're just drafting a guy that's coming off of the career year where it all just kind of clicked. Is like we always kind of waited on when is he finally going to have the season where the underlying stuff matches what he does from like an ERA standpoint. And he finally had that season, but the strikeout rate went down. He had the workload, but I think there's a tiny bit of his skills going the wrong way kind of a deal. And I just think that I typically try to, if I can, not draft those guys that are coming off that season where it's like everything kind of clicked and it went the way we kind of expected it to. That ADP is a little bit too rich for me in this range.
Okay, I'm glad you laid that out with Pivetta because I was curious because I almost had him as a target and I just was really interested in your take because I do have him on a team already. So it's a little surprising to see. I think the share I got of him was after pick 100. So recently he's kind of going in the 80s. These guys are just getting pushed up. The whip with him has last 3 years, it's been under 115 and then obviously under 1 this past year. So I like the whip that you're getting here. Obviously love the fact that he got to move from Boston to San Diego last year. Definitely contributed to him having that year. So I think he's going to have, last year was his career year. I think I would still project him to have his second best year of his career this year, just given where he's pitching. And, but that's a good point about the skills, the strikeout rate definitely dropped fairly significantly. So that's a good one to kind of flag there.
He's been going the ADP just keeps climbing. It's like mid 70s in some recent drafts. And the price point you got, I would much rather stack him beside Sonny Gray and Kevin Gausman and feel great about getting him in that range. But you kind of, when you moving up there to the Eury range, which, if you think Swollenbach's healthy, if you're an old McClanahan guy and stuff like that, it just keeps climbing. And it's it might be a little too much for me, given that everything finally clicked. And even if it regresses a little bit, you're still getting a guy, like you said, there's going to be some bankable stuff there, but it's just a little too rich for me right now.
Okay, Dustin. So these SP3s from SP31 to SP45 over these recent drafts, I think it starts opening up quite a bit here where there's going to be pitchers in this range that some people just don't even think belong anywhere near here. And really just not a lot of proven commodities in this range, or at least not a lot of guys that don't come with at least some question marks. Brandon Woodruff is leading the way with a recent ADP of 115. And then you got all the way down Sandy Alcantara down at 151. This is where you find a lot of these like young, trendy guys like your Chase Burns, Emmet Sheehan, Jacob Mizorowski, Cam Schlittler, Trey Savage, Bubba Chandler, etc. But then you've also got the veteran Robbie Ray, Eovaldi, Drew Rasmussen types, some guys coming back from injury. So a wide range here. Who's your first guy you want to mention as a target?
Yeah, for me, it's Nick Lodolo. Part of that's because I've landed on him a couple of times in drafts already, and he kind of, for whatever reason, at least in the drafts I've been, goes behind some of these guys. It's kind of like that first wave of the kind of the sexy names that go, and then he kind of sometimes lags like a round behind. But I just really like the gains that he showed kind of the end of the season. Just was in the zone more often. Was able to provide a little bit of a workload with him. I feel like it's always been kind of like there's always something going on with him, like foot related or leg related or something like that. But I like that he got to 156 innings. I like that the walk rate went down. It felt like he just threw a lot more quality strikes. And I think he showed some things at the end of the season, like, the fastball shape changed a little bit. It seems like Cincinnati is becoming a pretty sharp pitching organization with what they're doing with some of their arms. You look at what the development of guys like Hunter Green, obviously Chase Burns, I don't know how much development they did there, but his emergence and things like that. I like the way he finished the year from like a results stuff tweaking kind of standpoint. And then had the 156 innings, I think is something that he can build on from next year. And then from there, it's kind of like, it's almost like whoever falls, but you and I, me. I mean, we've both been big Bubba Chandler guys in the past, and he's been a target for me because I feel like he's kind of the discounted prospect name from the standpoint of like he's going way behind Burns and Sheehan and Schlittler and some of those other guys. It's like, man, if you can get Bubba Chandler like 150. I think people like if you go look at his game log, he had that one awful start where he might have been tipping his pitchers or something like that. He didn't walk a single batter after that the rest of the year. And it's like, okay, it's a good park. He throws a ton of strikes. I think that like worst case scenario, there's like an ERA that might be a little bit high, but there's going to be some whip. There's going to be some strikeouts. So I've just always been a big Bubba Chandler guy. And I like that he feels like kind of that second tier of those big, sexy prospect names in this group.
Yeah, no, I like Chandler too. I think it's my target is Emmet Sheehan. And I think that's probably why I haven't gotten Chandler yet. I've only done 3 drafts, but I'm usually not going to like double tap 2 of these guys. So Sheehan, I think he's like, I'm not that interested in Yamamoto or Snell at their like current price. But I think Sheehan's actually getting a little discounted. Those guys aren't getting discounted because of the Dodger thing, I don't think. And I think Sheehan is, because I do think there is still in the back of some people's minds, like, is this guy truly in the rotation? Can I trust he's in the rotation? But he was like a top 10 starter over the last 2 months last year.
Oh, and, the results were elite.
Like, I think if you're looking for a guy to just provide, close to SP1 strikeout production outside of the top 30 starters, like I think Sheehan is my pick. So really betting on the skills, and I think he's just kind of got a bit more track record than some of these other guys. But I'm with you, like Chandler. Honestly, like I'm very frustrated by sort of how sharp the market is on Chandler. Because I think like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, he would have been going like pick 180, pick 190. But he's not. He's going inside the top 150. So yeah, we gave our targets. Now my avoid here is Brandon Woodruff. Talked about him with Dave McDonald a few weeks ago. I think he's probably the riskiest of these guys from a workload standpoint. Pablo Lopez, I think, is pretty risky too. But I just don't trust Woodruff to throw 100 innings. He came back from such a serious shoulder injury last year, and obviously the return just kept getting delayed. And then the stuff, I know the results were great. The stuff was not really where it had been during his prime years. especially from a velocity standpoint. So then you factor in how he finished the year, like he would have done anything to get out there for the playoffs, and he just wasn't even close. So I'm really confused by this price on Woodruff. I think it's a pretty easy pass. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, Woodruff, man, he's so tantalizing. I mean, I was amazed at how like he reinvented himself and how good he was. But like, I don't know if people are just like, because he got the QO from a team that doesn't really spend a lot of money, they're like, whoa, well, they must think he's ready to rock. But like usually those types of shoulder injuries are kind of like a death sentence for pitchers. So
I don't think they thought he would pick it up.
yeah, maybe that's the case. But
I think there was a lot of that this offseason with teams not expecting players to jump on the money. So I think that was maybe one of those cases. With a guy with his upside, I don't think many teams would be opposed to like a 1-year deal on that type of guy.
Right. Yeah. For me, my first avoid was Robbie Ray. I just remember being really, really excited about him in spring training when there was talk of the changeup and things like that. But you look at the things across the board. I mean, the Sierra got way worse. The XFIP got worse. The K to Bibee just wasn't nearly as good as it was last year. The stuff ratings went down. I just feel like people kind of still have in their mind the visions of Robbie Ray, the big strikeout guy that can provide you all those Ks in the workload potentially. But I'm just not seeing it. I'm seeing a guy that kind of looked to show his age a little bit in the mileage on his arm this past year. And the other guy for me is Sandy Alcantara. I just think the contact he gives up, it's kind of scary. And, this is a guy he doesn't have the big strikeout rate. He's never had the big strikeout rate. And I really like what Miami's doing from a pitching development side, but I'm just a little perplexed about this price because you kind of looked into, he showed some major signs of life last year, but like, even though the ERA was unfair, you kind of look at all the other indicators underneath, 4.38 Sierra, 11.4 K minus Bibee, 4.28 FIP. I don't know. I'm just not seeing it here. I'd much rather bet on a guy that might give you that big strikeout upside, like some of these prospect names, or can maybe be a better bet to return ratios. But it's just a price I don't really get. Because he hasn't really shown, kind of the stuff to get the strikeouts and really the ability to avoid hard contact to kind of keep those ratios in a better spot.
Yeah, I mean, the most dangerous thing you can do with your like SP1, SP2, SP3 picks is get a guy who like actively hurts your ratios initially, and like that's tough to do with like an early pick with the guys with these skills, but like Ray, like, you could see him having like a blow up start at home against a shaky offense that you just wouldn't expect to see coming necessarily. But yeah, this is just such a weird group of 15. It really kind of runs the gamut.
I feel like if you nail this group, you're probably going to win your league. Like
I agree.
Like if you find the one or two guys in here that really hit, I feel like you're probably going to be in a good position to win your league.
And that like 5 of these guys are gonna bust.
Oh yeah,
either get like injury or just something. So, interesting group. Let's move to the SP4s. This is another fun group. This is Tatsuya Imai at 46 among the SPs with an ADP recently in Draft Champions around 150. And that goes all the way down to Jack Flaherty at the Tigers, going just outside the top 200. A decent amount of veterans here in this range, Dustin, as everyone's reaching for those trendy SP3s. I think it's my turn to go with a target here. I see that we actually have a potential disagreement.
Our first.
I do like Tatsuya Imai a lot. He's a target for me among these SP4s. I think he'd be a target for me if he was going with the SP3s, and I kind of think he will be going with the SP3s when it's main event time, potentially even higher than that. But my target here, on the SP4 side is MacKenzie Gore over at pick 201. Obviously a whip risk, but a massive source of strikeouts, and probably the best source of strikeouts outside of the SP3s. So it's just kind of a question of how bad are the ratios going to be to justify those strikeouts. He was at a 1.35 whip last year, and he kind of fell apart a bit in the second half. But I still see a chance for things to click here. He's still just 26. The breaking balls are great. The fastball is a bit of a problem at times, but I think he's just been getting slightly better, slightly better with the whip, and the strikeouts are just so hard to find that I like kind of, if I've done my job in my first like 3 starting pitcher picks, and I've really built that whip base nicely, and I've got like a top 10 closer to go along with that to help with the ratios, I think I can handle taking on MacKenzie Gore's ratios in order to get his Ks. But I'd be interested in hearing your counter to that.
Yeah, Gore, it's hard for me because the wannabe scout in me sees this lefty with this stuff and the ability to get whiffs. And like, I remember messaging, it might've been Scott Ginstad, because I think he was in on Gore last year, that one of those first starts he had where it was like, he looked like prime Kershaw. I mean, just like commanding everything, executing, like guys could not touch this guy. I was like, I missed MacKenzie Gore's breakout year. And you get to the end of the year, it's kind of the same thing. Like the whip got a little bit better, but it's still an issue. Like showed some signs where it's like, oh my gosh, he's dominant for a month or 2 months and then kind of falls apart. So for me, he's an avoid for the whip, but it's also because I want to see him get out of Washington. Although I am a tiny bit more optimistic that there's just a new regime in there that can maybe help some on the pitching development side. It just feels like they just weren't getting what they should get out of a lot of their guys, a lot of their stuff guys. So that makes me a little more optimistic about him. But it's really the whip is what it comes down to. And I think there's just a risk that like a guy like that, I think you have to be hyper focused on what he's doing. Because you might look and it's like, hey, he threw 6 innings and struck out 10 guys this game. And you kind of look and over 2 months, like, oh my gosh, he's had a 1.4 whip these 2 months, and like how it's impacting the rest of your roster. So I totally get it. I love watching the guy, but like until that whip changes or until he gets out of Washington, it's just going to be an avoid for me. And I realize that I'm probably going to miss his breakout season, which might be this season, but I'll be willing to kind of take that to avoid the risk of having, that whip in there for 170, 180 innings.
Yeah, that's completely fair. It's definitely kind of a blind bet to some degree on just things getting better through him potentially talking to better people.
Right.
I mean, we saw what like the Tigers just trade for Kyle Finnegan, and all of a sudden he's way better. Like, I definitely don't think things are going to be like as bad as they were last year, and a trade could still happen.
Right.
That would be fantastic. I like the price. It's kind of just that amount, like over 200 strikeouts at pick 200. It's tough to pass up on, but like it's completely possible that he negates all that value with his ratios. But now it's, I guess, your turn to talk about a target here among these SP4s.
Yeah, I had Imai as a target as well, especially now that he landed in Houston. I think that's just such a great spot from him from both a development standpoint, but also a team context standpoint with them defensively and to be in a position for wins. And it's just such a like unique profile, like with the release height and the arm angle and the fastball and like the backwards doesn't make sense slider that goes the other way. And like he's added to the arsenal over the years. The walk rate's gotten a lot better. I'm probably reading too much into this, but I just like the way the dude carries himself, seeing him show up to Houston. the press conference. And I grew up in Houston, so maybe that he's kind of appealing to me. But, what's up, H-Town? He's at the Rockets game going crazy. He's at the Texans game. And the dude clearly does not lack confidence at all. And I think he's got some real stuff. And I think he landed in a good spot. And a good organization that's proven consistently that they really maximize guys' arsenal and get the most out of them. So definitely really, really like the price. And I imagine that this will probably be the last sort of period of time where you can get him at this price.
Yeah, man. I think I took my last draft was a month ago probably, and I took him higher than this recent ADP. So I anticipated the market already being, take this guy at pick 120, take this guy at pick 115. So I'm just fully assuming that's going to be the case by March, but we'll see. I mean, he does have to jump over like 15 of these guys basically to kind of get to where I think a fair ADP would be, but
right. Yeah. And I left off my second target too. It was Tanner Bibee, which surprises me because he's one of the guys that wrecked my CLQ auction team last year. But I think when he found something in September with the pitch mix, and all of a sudden the command was back. I felt like the execution was back. The results were back. And it really reminded me of a guy that was like, okay, I think the last month of the year was the guy that we thought we were paying for. And, I talked earlier about Pie and Pivetta off of a career year. Well, you're kind of getting Tanner Bibee about 100 picks later than he was going last year. And I think that you can feel pretty good. He's going to give you the workload. Cleveland's probably going to have a pretty good defense behind him. He's going to be in a chance for some wins. But I'm just a sucker for those guys that show something from a pitch mix standpoint for like a consistent period of time. And his September really makes me optimistic about the way he's gonna pitch in 2026.
Yeah, that's a great call. I remember I had John Posma on the pod last offseason. We were recapping our 500 DC auction, and he got Freddie Peralta for like 15, and 16. I think I got Bibee for 16, and I was like, yeah, I had those guys valued about the same, and he was like, yeah, me too. And
that's just how it goes sometimes,
like Tanner Bibee had one season. So
yeah, just how one guy has a monster year and the other guy doesn't come close to what we expect, and it's just like it's better to be lucky than good sometimes, with some of these guys we land on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's probably a little bit of skill involved there in Posma getting the right guy.
Yeah, one of the goats for sure. Yeah. No, James, I had him the same way. Who knows? He probably had Peralta 30 spots ahead of Bibee and just isn't telling us.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, so avoids here among the SP4s. Cade Horton's my avoid. He's got a recent ADP just inside the top 200. I just think you're getting fewer strikeouts from him on a per start basis than the rest of these guys. I don't know, maybe with the exception of like his teammate Shota Imanaga. But I think it's tough for me to take a guy as like a top 4 pitcher on my staff or even a top 5 pitcher on my staff if I don't think he can get a strikeout per inning. So Cade Horton for me.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've looked at his splits, but and I think he's a really skilled pitcher, and I think what he does from a contact standpoint is a true skill. But 191 BABIP and 93.8 left on base percentage in the second half last year. So some things were definitely in his favor for sure. My other avoid, we talked about Gore, Shane Bieber, and this kind of goes back to some of the things I was talking about Spencer Strider. I just like watching him, like from the stuff results standpoint, it didn't quite look as good as I wanted it to. I feel like, and I have to go back and look, I feel like his barrel rate was unusually high, and you just watch him and just like, it didn't seem like hitters were reacting to him the same way they had pre-injury. And then with this, the forearm fatigue type deal, the chances that maybe he's gonna enter the year with like a reduced workload type of plan. I just kind of look at where he's going. You look at some of those guys going behind there, and I just want to see him get into spring training and like normal spring training, get back on the mound, all that sort of stuff, because the conversation's been a little bit worrisome with me. And although he was fine when he came back, it just didn't quite still look like vintage Shane Bieber that's going to go out there and potentially mow some guys down and put up some great numbers.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a guy where I'm just kind of passing for now because I just don't think I know the whole story with, and you kind of look at the way the Blue Jays have approached the offseason. It sort of seems like they are protecting themselves for the potential chance that he isn't ready or needs to be kind of slow played or whatever.
Yeah.
And just him picking up that, like, I thought his was even more surprising than Woodruff. It was the QO that Bieber picked up.
No, it was his option. It was.
It was like
wasn't it? I think it was 16 million. I think.
Yeah.
So even that followed by the forum reports, it was kind of like, oh, that's a little. At first, we were all like, man, he must really love Toronto, and he does. Like the family does, and that was part of it. But like now, it's like, well, maybe he really loved Toronto, and there might be some lingering issues coming off of that surgery. So
yeah, maybe he really trusted the medical staff in Toronto.
To
help him through this.
Which is a thing.
Yeah, and so it's like, if Bieber, if he's looking good and all the reports are good in the spring, like he's not like a do not draft guy for me at that point. And
agreed.
I'm also just really interested in following just the news on Zach Wheeler because thoracic outlet, it's such a kind of developing thing, and his was like a lesser version, and like I'm not ruling out him being ready for opening day, in which case he would be a huge value where he's going. So
he's the one name of that group that I feel like every draft I do and he doesn't end up on team, I'm like, did I just miss like an obvious like guy here that's going to provide a lot of value in that spot? We'll see. I learned this offseason there are different types of thoracic outlet. I had no idea.
Yeah. Okay, so the SP5s, this is a range that I have some avoids here. I didn't mark down a single target, and it's nothing against these pitchers. To me, they're all just kind of guys who I might take, but I'm perfectly fine not even taking any pitchers kind of in this range. This goes from Aaron Nola at around pick 215. You got Zach Allen, Andrew Abbott, all the way down to Ryan Nelson, who's going around pick 260 with the Diamondbacks. Again, I didn't have a target here. I have some avoids that we'll get to, but who are some guys that you like to target here among these SP5s?
Yeah, I'm actually a really big Andrew Abbott fan, and I think that he's a really good example of the types of things pitchers can do, especially lefties, that projections are just never going to capture. The crossfire delivery from the unique side of the rubber and the deception that creates and the looks for hitters and the skill of executing that and executing your pitches, and also kind of getting the weaker contact out of that as well. I mentioned earlier, I like what Cincinnati's doing with arms, and he's another example of that. I thought he took a big step forward last year. The whip really improved. And he's just a guy that's consistently over and over and over again beat projections. I mean, we're up to the point where he's had 75 starts, 403.2 innings pitched in his career. And he's at a 3.42 ERA. So, like, yeah, you can kind of look at the underlying things and say there might be a season where he's the underlying guy instead of the guy that he's shown on the surface. I don't know. I'm going to continue to bet on him. The workload went up again. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be in a good position to give you some wins, given the extended workload, his ability to get deep in the game. So Andrew Abbott, a guy I like in this range, and kind of along those same lines is Noah Cameron. And I didn't expect to really like Noah Cameron a ton this year. I feel like he's going to get overdrafted because he's a prospect that kind of had a good year last year. But kind of dig it in. The Arsenal in particularly the secondary stuff and the off-speed stuff had much better results than I anticipated. And I think if you can kind of see maybe the fastball improving in some ways, or maybe it's just kind of continues to lead more on that secondary stuff. It's a deep arsenal. He got results last year. It's another organization I think is doing some good things with arms. And I think, again, he's another one of those lefties that I keep finding these lefties I like that seemingly the projections aren't really capturing some of the things that they're doing. So kind of more safer floor kind of a guys here. But I think this is kind of that range where if you've taken some risk earlier on a draft, you can kind of feel some guys that are a little bit more bankable from like a workload innings kind of predictability standpoint. So those are 2 targets for me in this range.
Yeah, nothing wrong with just going after lefties in general. I think I've ended up with a Connolly Early. I've ended up with a Matthew Boyd in this range. And I think I've ended up with a Ryan Nelson. The Andrew Abbott point is a great point of just like if we can find a guy that you think projections are just going to be like, if the projections are all saying 4.4 ERA and you think it's a 3.8 ERA, like that's a massive advantage, right? Like it doesn't necessarily matter who the player is, but like if you just think there's a weakness in the projections, that's huge. So that being like him consistently proving like he's like the anti Nick Pivetta, where he's just consistently
that's a great way to put it.
Consistently beating the ERA estimators, but certainly some skill there, not just luck. Now for the avoids here on these SP5s, I've got a few. Roki Sasaki's one. I just have no idea what I'm getting from him statistically. I would much rather him have just been announced as the team's closer. Like it's definitely telling that his ADP plummeted after it was announced he's going to be a starter. Yeah. And like he could be a great starter for them. I just like you can't say that you'd be surprised if he's a bad starter for them when he hasn't been a good starter for them yet. And they just have so many options. Like I love, like they go like 10 deep of starting pitchers I love. So Roki Sasaki's one, and then Shane McClanahan, don't have to beat that dead horse. And then Bryce Miller again. I think he could potentially be broken. Like I think he might need some sort of procedure. The results weren't what I would like to see when he came back. So those are 3 pretty easy avoids for me.
Yeah, I made a last minute update to my list. We had all 3 same avoids. I think it's you've probably seen the stat. I forget who published it on X, but like that Shane McClanahan hasn't pitched an MLB game since Paul Skeens debuted. Like it's been that long. And when he was on the mound, it wasn't promising then. I mean, in terms of like the rehabs and stuff like that. So agree 100% on Sasaki. Even just like from an Arsenal standpoint, there's not much depth there to really turn over a lineup. And when you're like splitter guys, like I like a lot of splitter guys, but like with them, it's just the hardest pitch to command. Like it's just difficult to lean on that kind of pitch consistently. And Bryce Miller to me just has not ever looked the same since he had those elbow issues. And so that's a clear avoid for me as well.
Yeah. Bryce Miller destroyed some of my fantasy teams last year and has not been heard from since in any kind of positive way. Okay, Dustin, the SP6s. I did not have any targets among the SP5s. I love these SP6s.
The fun group.
This is a money range to me. This is just get as many of these guys in auctions as possible. We're at pitchers 76 through 90 here. Sean Manaea at 260 or 270 roughly in terms of recent ADP, down to Reese Olson going around pick 300. So kind of bunched up here from 270 to 300. I would expect the guys that Dustin and I like to be going, 30, 40 picks higher as we get closer to opening day. But, Mike Burrows, I know the ADP is going up since he got traded to Houston. I'm going to follow the ADP as high as it goes, probably on Mike Burrows. I just think he was fantastic last year. Sneaky high upside, and I think a pretty high floor. Shane Smith with the White Sox has just a monster fastball and looked like a beast down the stretch last year. Joey Cantillo with the Guardians I've talked about before, but another lefty where I just think he's underrated. I think he's one of the Guardians' best starters. I think he's got a high strikeout ceiling on a per start basis. Hurston Waldrop, I thought was going to be getting way overdrafted based on where he went in that too early meatball draft I did with Rob DiPietro. But I think everyone's just kind of cooled the market on Waldrop to the point where he's available in this range. And he's the type of guy where like if he's just not locating his pitches, maybe he's not even that useful for you, but maybe, one of the best splitters in baseball. And love the context of like, I think Atlanta's going to win a bunch of games, and like he could show up to spring training and just be mowing people down, and he's going like he could have like a Gavin Williams type of rise in ADP once spring training starts. So I think you're getting a nice discount on Waldrop right now in draft season. And then Braxton Ashcraft rounding things out. I could have listed more guys here, but Braxton Ashcraft I think has just a monster ceiling as well with the Pirates. And the durability issues have obviously been an issue, but he's healthy now. He just had his best stretch as a pro and showed just a ridiculously high ceiling, I think. So just a ton of guys I love here in this 76 to 90 SP range.
Yeah, it's a range I love a lot too. We've got a lot of crossover on our targets list. You mentioned Burrows. Beyond like what he showed in the second half, and I think he found kind of a better arm angle and the results and stuff like that, I think people need to stop and see what Houston gave up to get him. Like, it was I know it was a 3-team deal, but I mean, Houston, Jacob Melton and Brito, the other prospect, like that's a pretty substantial haul. And, part of that was because Burrows has so much team control, but like part of it too is like Houston saw what he did in Pittsburgh. Cantillo, I think he had a little bit of a kind of an arm angle change. He came back, he was throwing a bunch more strikes. And I wonder if Cleveland just kind of like got in his head finally, like, dude, just pitch in the zone, like as much as you can with your stuff, with your extension, like let all those gifts work for you. And he had a really, really strong close to the season. You mentioned Ashcraft, agree 100%. He's a guy, like, even if I get like 100 innings out of him in like a DC format, I feel like I'm going to get really good ratios, strikeout rate. Another guy that's closed the season really strong. And then I had Sean Manai on there just because he was really unlucky last year, and I am worried about kind of the loose bodies deal. And he, I think he gave an interview recently where he's like, I don't feel it right now. And it's like, in my head, like, right now, let's hope you don't the entire next year. But I just think there's a path to him recapturing what he did the year prior. And then Ian Seymour for me, especially with, Tampa Bay dealing Shane Baz, I think this is a guy they must have a lot of confidence in. The park's going to be good. The defense is going to be good. Another one of those kind of those funky lefties that kind of can maybe beat projections with what he does. Kind of unique shape to the pitches, releases, and all that sort of stuff. So I like what he showed to you in the season, and I think Tampa is gonna need him to be a full workload kind of a guy this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like Ian Seymour going here, I don't know how long that lasts. I think he probably should be going where Noah Cameron's going.
That's a good comp.
But just another lefty, like where it's just like pitching in Tropicana. Like you look at Ian Seymour's track record, he's just always suppressed runs. Like he just seems like a fairly safe pick there. Now, there are a few guys that we don't like, and they're actually the same three guys. I mean, Bailey Ober, like he's not going anywhere near one of my fantasy starting lineups in a high stakes league. I just have like I don't know if there's a guy getting drafted in the top 300 that I have less ratio faith in from like a start to start basis than Bailey Ober. Zebby Matthews, I think the fastball just remains eminently hittable despite the fact he's added velocity. So just another guy like I'm trying to avoid getting howked in 2026. And so like just anyone that could potentially go in there and just give up 12 earned runs in 2 innings. Like I just don't want them on my teams. That could be guys that end up on my teams, of course. Like there's going to be guys Dustin and I are wrong about in this pod. But like with Bailey Ober, with Zebby Matthews, I don't trust them to not get lit up on any given start. And then Reese Olson, the Tigers, I think are probably expecting another 100 inning season out of him. And he's just kind of, that is what he is at this point. It's just kind of a discount version Tyler Glasnow, basically, where you're just getting 100 innings. Anything to add on those guys?
Yeah, I will say with Zebby, I feel like, and look, we could both be totally wrong about this guy, but I feel like he's one of those kind of Braden Fought like traps,
Yep.
where
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
start to look at the strikeout to walk, you start to look like all the underlying indicators, and you're like, oh, well, this guy was just unlucky. And then you look
Mhm.
and see he had 10% or worse barrel rate on 4 separate pitches last year. So
Mhm.
there's clearly some things going on here with the arsenal, the way it's used. You mentioned the fastball. And, strangely enough to me, I mean, Simeon Woods Richardson might be a guy we talk about in a little bit. I feel like the Twin, had the splitter. It's like, oh man, he's a new guy. But like, I don't feel like Minnesota's really done that with a lot of arms. I feel like they have a lot of guys, that kind of, you think that they're going to be better when they come up, and they're just kind of not reaching their potential. And I think Zebby Matthews is one of those guys. Now, there's a path for him to achieve it. Pulls back on the fastball, really leans into the other stuff, and figures out a way to kind of suppress that really, really hard contact. But I just feel like if you're one of those people that's just going to go through Sierra and K minus Bibee and the stuff models, you're going to like Zebby Matthews is a smash here.
Right.
And, the real smashing's been when hitters are in the box against him, against
Right.
his arsenal. That's been the problem.
Yeah. The fat call is exactly on the money. Like you get into such a tough spot when those guys are on your team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just end up being better off just dropping them immediately so that they stop damaging your ratios. But then you're looking at that FIP, and it's just like, well, man, he's got to get better. Just ends up being kind of a trap.
I mean, Zebby's end of season is just classic. Like 6 innings, 1 run, 4.2 innings, 5 runs, 3 innings, 9 runs, 7 innings, 1 run. I mean, that's just the roller coaster some of these guys ride, especially the guys that just don't have the fastball.
Okay, so we like those SP6s. I like a lot of these SP7s, Dustin. We got pitcher 91, Jameson Tyone, going just outside the top 300 recently, down to pitcher 105, Clay Holmes, going around pick 350 here. Who do you want to shout out as some targets in this range?
Yeah, I find myself in drafts really hammering both of these ranges that we're talking about right now, the SP6 and the SP7 range. I think there's some upside guys and some kind of floor bankable guys as well. My first guy is Brady Singer, and again, Cincinnati. I think they're really doing a lot of good things with arms, and he started incorporating a sweeper more to end the season, and everything got better. Like the strikeouts got better. The walks got better. The underlying data got better. And I think you can feel pretty good about the workload he's going to give. He's just been a guy that's kind of given you, 160, 170 bankable innings. But now I think there's some actual room for growth here. We've always been saying, Brady Singer, like if he can just add like a little bit more to the arsenal. And I think he showed us that to end the season. Cade Cavalli, like really liked what he showed. I think he had that one start against the Yankees where he gave up 3 or 4 home runs. And I think he only gave up 3 home runs, like the other 41 innings he threw in the year. There's a lot to like about the underlying data. There's a lot to like about the stuff. I mean, big, strong guy, former top pick. I'm optimistic that maybe he can kind of have a little bit of a mini breakout. Robbie Snelling is my favorite of like the true yet to debut prospects. Lefty. I thought what Miami did with him, from like the fastball standpoint, it just seemed like it really everything kind of went up a notch this past year for Robbie Snelling. And then I can't quit Ryan Weathers. I'm gonna keep following him, for maybe that 140 inning kind of a season where it's just like when he's in there, he's good. And when he's not, you can just kind of keep him on the bench for an extended period of time, or maybe even just cut him loose. So I'll continue to follow him. And I really, really like what Miami's doing with pitching.
Yeah, man, lots of great names there. You and I are Weathers bros. I'll be definitely following along. And just the Marlins, like who's in that Marlins rotation on opening day? Like whoever it's going to be, I'm going to want most of them, if not all of them. And we saw Edward Cabrera got traded just before the show to the Cubs, so that's one spot open. Max Meyer is someone I was going to hit on later. Braxton Garrett, Bubba But Robbie Snelling, who you brought up, what do you sort of envision his ceiling being as a rookie? Because I think the floor is kind of obviously potentially pretty alluring. Like he's pretty good at everything. He's got a full pitch mix, but like, do you see this guy as someone who, like, in next year we're taking in like the top 150, or is he just kind of a screaming value because of his price right now, but you see sort of more like number 3, number 4 ups?
No, I think he's a guy. You look at some of these guys that are going kind of in the 150 range right now. Like, I mean, I could even totally see him having a season like Gavin Williams had last year, and maybe not quite that ERA, which was unlucky for Gavin Williams, but no, I think there's a clear ceiling here. Like it wouldn't shock me at all if he outperforms Sandy Alcantara this year. Assuming that there's a workload in there that like he's going to throw as many innings as I think he's going to throw. I mean, you mentioned Cabrera getting traded. That's another one. And I just like the way he threw in the minors with, the walk rates, the strikeouts. Again, we're talking about a big, strong left-handed pitcher who throws hard. Like just from a pure like scouting standpoint, if you're scouting your own organization, like he's going to just be a guy that's super appealing. So no, like it's a combination of the price. Like I feel like for him, and maybe this is because there's, he has some hype, but like maybe not as much hype as I thought he'd have. So it's a combination of the price, but really it wouldn't shock me at all if this is a guy we're drafting at 150 next year, ADP wise.
Yeah. And I do think he breaks camp in that rotation. I know there's some stuff to get sorted out, but Cabrera's out of the way. They could still trade Alcantara. And I just think there's too much incentive. Like Snelling is more stretched out than most of their guys. Might as well go for that PPI pick and give the guys like Garrett and Meyer and Weathers, potentially whoever's less built up, just a slow entry into the season. I'm right there with you on Snelling, right there with you on Cade Cavalli. I think he's a great strikeout upside play in this range. Jose Soriano, I have here as a target. I think he's going to be another disagreement for us, but I think the price is low enough that I'm willing to take a bet on the skills. But it's, I kind of went back looking, trying to figure out what it was that really appealed to me when I was doing the dive on him about a month ago. There is definitely some downside with Jose Soriano, like not only from just how hard he throws and the recent injury history, but he's just like MacKenzie Gore. He could be a whip killer, but he also just has such a I'm loving the upside if he could just kind of figure out how to cut the walks a little bit and stay healthy, because I think he had like a 60% ground ball rate in the second half last year. So Soriano, I think, is a loose target here for me. And then I think Cody Ponce is just mispriced here. I think he's going to be someone that should be going in like the 250, 240 range in Vegas. Just think the upside, the innings, the team context, it's better than a lot of these guys. And the floor, I think, is higher than a lot of these guys here. Now for avoids, I've got Clay Holmes as one. I just think he's so, like, he hurts you so much in the strikeouts. I just don't really think it's a good use of one of your 9 starting pitching spots to be using Clay Holmes. Similar thing with Brian Bayo. You're taking such a hit on the strikeouts. Yeah. I'd like him to get traded to just a better park, but he'd also probably be going to a worse team. So don't really like Bayo. And then Kodai Senga, I'm worried he might be kind of broken based on how he finished the season. But who are your avoids?
Yeah, Senga, man, he just hasn't looked right. I've got Soriano in here, and part of that's because I kind of have a hard and fast rule that if it's not George Clausen, I don't draft Angels pitchers. I don't trust.
Go Gophers.
Yeah, I don't trust anything that organization does from like a player development standpoint. And like the moment, like Yusei Kikuchi last year signed with them, and I was like, I'm out. That's it.
Yep.
I'm done. But like, he is really tantalizing. I had Soriano on several important teams last year. You look at the stuff and you watch him, and like, but I feel like he's a guy that needs somebody, like you said with MacKenzie Gore, needs somebody to kind of like fine tune the arsenal and the approach to really get the breakout out of him. And I'm just not confident that the Angels are going to do that. My other avoid was Seth Lugo. He just got worse across the board last year, and he's, already one of those guys that kind of like you try to bet on to beat projections because it's such a wide arsenal in the field of pitch and the workload and stuff like that. But some of these underlying stuff are just scary. Like, the pitching plus has gone from in 2023 104 to 88 this past year. The bot ERA was 5.09. The Sierra was 4.53, and he was already a guy that was not going to get you to strikeouts besides being a compiler. So I just like, he's a major red flag to me, like screaming avoid. Like, I don't see anything in this profile that makes me optimistic that like he might have found the cliff last year and might be falling off of it.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. This range, there's guys I love and there's guys I'm just not touching.
Yeah. Am I missing with Jonah Tong, a guy that goes in this range? I feel like that's one that I'm kind of like, am I missing out here?
I know. Eno was really down on him when he came on the pod a month ago. But I do think he's a worthwhile shot at this price. Just seems like, the Met, like, what are the Mets going to do? Send him to AAA for a couple months? Like, I don't think he has anything to do in the minors really anymore. He does probably have some stuff to work on, especially with just the depth of arsenal. But yeah, he was statistically, just from a result standpoint, he was the best starter in the minors last year.
And that's got to account for something. Yeah, I feel like if he didn't debut, he'd be going like 100 picks higher than he's going right now.
No doubt. Or if he just had
two decent
to his
starts.
ERA estimators.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just two above average starts, like 12 innings,
Okay, Dustin. So we went through the SP1s through the SP7s by ADP. So that's the top 105 starting pitchers by recent draft champions NFBC ADP. Now we're going to give just a few of our favorites who are going outside that top 105. So these are theoretically like reserve SPs, guys potentially on your bench to start the year. I'll let you start things off here with just a couple favorites.
Yeah, one guy in your backyard, Chad Patrick. When I dug into him a little bit more, the second half, strikeout rate went way up, 31.1 K percentage, through some big moments for the Brewers. And I wonder if the fact that like there's a little bit of uncertainty about his role is kind of depressing the price here. I feel like the Brewers came out tomorrow and said, this guy's locked into our rotation. I feel like that he would kind of move up from there. But when you've got kind of Logan Henderson and some of those other guys lingering around there, and he kind of threw out of a relief role a little bit last year. But I really like the skills that he showed. And I love what Milwaukee's just doing in general from like a, run prevention, pitching development, just like winning games standpoint. And another guy, Jacob Lopez from the A's. And there is a little bit of an injury risk here. He's a guy that didn't end up the season on the mound. And obviously that park is scary. As somebody that drafted Luis Severino on a couple of important teams last year, but just a unique arm angle, lefty, kind of those limbs coming at you, that size, the lower angle, big strikeout rates, really strong second half of the season. The whip was totally manageable. And I feel like if he ended the season on the mound, I feel like he'd be going much, much higher here. So yeah, there is the risk of that, but I think that the risk is totally fine to take in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chad Patrick of the Brewers is maybe the most underpriced starter that we're talking about today. I think he's just absolutely in that rotation. And I think he's everything you said, like down the stretch, strikeouts. It's just he doesn't have any prospect pedigree at all. Mm-hmm. And that's why people just aren't fully buying that he's in the rotation. But I'm fully buying that he's in the rotation. And I don't understand why he's getting drafted behind Logan Henderson. So he would have been one of mine. And with Jacob Lopez, I'm definitely with you for the strikeouts. I haven't fully kind of figured out how to factor that park in. But yeah, I definitely like the skills with Lopez. And Simeon Wood Richardson, I've gotten some complaints about talking about him too much on the pod. But definitely love the way he finished last year, and just like combination of definitely in the rotation, definitely capable of throwing innings, definitely no injury red flags, and just the chance for him to continue last season's late year breakout. Then Max Meyer with the Marlins. Again, like I said, if whoever's breaking camp in that Marlins rotation, I probably want a piece of. He's right there with, Ryan Weathers and Braxton Garrett from just how many innings are we going to get out of this guy? But, back in April before he started getting hurt, I was like, man, I really missed the boat not drafting Max Meyer in teams. Maybe he just can't stay healthy. Maybe he ends up being a reliever long-term, but I do think there's a ceiling worth chasing on your bench in Max Meyer. And then last one, why not just try out a lefty in one of the most pitcher-friendly parks in the league, and Jacob Latz?
Yeah, good call.
Texas. He's been mentioned during the offseason as a potential closer, but I think he's probably more of a starter. And just a nice draft champions piece, depending on how his role fluctuates throughout the year. Some breakout potential, but also just I think he's going to be a pretty steady option. So any final thoughts here, Dustin?
No, I'm going to break your heart with Simeon Woods Richardson. I just looked. I think I have the max on him at like 418. I think is where I got him. So it's. I remember discovering the splitter like last year, and it was like a eureka moment, and everybody's kind of caught on to the splitter. But no, I mean, I really do think that like this is, to me, how you win leagues is diving into the pitching and understanding the profiles of these guys, both from like a risk standpoint, but also like a skill standpoint, and like how they impact your teams. Like, who are the strikeout guys? Who are the whip guys? Like, who are the guys you think can beat projections and like all that sort of stuff? Because I think pitcher projections, to me, I don't really look at them a lot at all. Yeah. Just because I think that some of these guys have shown so much from a skill standpoint that can just beat projections. So it's I really do think that group we talked about earlier, kind of that 110 to 160 range, like I think there's going to be some leagues won and lost with what happens in that range. And it's a really tough group to predict. Like every time I don't take Chase Burns, I'm like, did I just miss like the Spencer Strider up and coming guy now? Like, so I really do think that range, if you can nail one of the guys that breaks out from that range, you're going to really help yourself. But understand that everybody, I think, is going to enter drafts in March with that same idea.
Yeah. And obviously completely different doing auctions versus drafts. Auctions, the guys that we were loving and gushing about going in like the late 200s, they're going to go for twice their age in the first serious auctions. And but I do love kind of talking about it in these sort of pockets from a snake draft standpoint, because you do kind of have to know, starting in round one, like, where do I need to start investing in SPs so that I keep up with my league? And are there pockets where, like, I don't want to have to be needing my SP3 here or needing my SP4 here. Yeah. I want to make sure you have that taken care of. So you got to kind of go one by one with these guys and do the work, because the projections are not going to help you. I mean, they're going to help you, but they're not going to help you win leagues against really competitive players in the NFBC. So very fun stuff, Dustin. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure we'll be chatting offline about these guys leading up to March, and looking forward to seeing you out in Vegas. So thanks for hopping on with me.
Yeah, James, always a pleasure, man. Hope you're having a good 2026, and looking forward to seeing you out in Vegas for sure.
Awesome. Well, as I said, prospect content will be hitting the site regularly starting next week, and the top 400 prospect rankings will be fully updated January 15th. So some prospect pods in the future, and YouTube 15 if you want to get 15% off to check out those prospect rankings. But thanks for listening, everybody. I'll be back with a first-year player draft mock pod next week.